One of my first lessons I learned on business is I had run this tennis camp all summer, Courtney. I'd hauled my kids out to the court. I taught tennis in the blazing heat. I got to the end of the summer and I made zero money. Now, looking
No.
back, I'm thinking, how stupid is that? Like I should have known halfway in. I had to pay instructors and I had to pay for the equipment and I had to, but it was this
Yeah.
first lesson of there's some basic things with business. You got to know the money coming in and you got to know the money going out.
Yeah.
But it was during that time when I was just dabbling in some things. And then I also decided to have this little consignment sale in my living room.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Blueprint. I'm Courtney Cook, founder of Monarch COO, where I help mission-driven entrepreneurs grow their businesses. Each week, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs to explore the stories behind their successes and challenges. Whether you're just dreaming of starting a business or already building one, this podcast is here to show you that entrepreneurship is more attainable than it might seem, with insights for every stage of the journey. Let's dive in to today's conversation and see what it takes to build a business. Rhea Lana Riner is the CEO and founder of Rhea Lana's Children Consignment Events, a national franchise with 120 locations in 26 states. What started as a simple clothing swap in her living room has grown into a multi-million-dollar business, empowering moms, building community, and providing families with high-quality, affordable children's merchandise. Passionate about helping women balance motherhood and entrepreneurship, Rhea Lana has mentored countless franchise owners, guiding them towards personal and professional success. Welcome to the podcast, Rhea Lana.
Hi, Courtney. Thank you for having me.
Will you kick us off by sharing more about your business, what you do, who you serve, and how long have you been a business owner?
Well, I have been in business for almost 30 years. It's crazy that it's been that long.
Yeah.
I started my business when I was a stay-at-home mom with 3 small children. And what I do is I serve moms and we have children's consignment events. And so I had a little event in my living room a long time ago. Didn't know anything about business. My family doesn't do business, but I just fell in love with serving moms, helping them save money and have beautiful things for their children. So that's how it all got started.
Wow, that's really cool. And no background in like business ownership, whether with your parents, your husband, anything.
No, now my husband did have a business degree, which is more than I had. I have a degree, but it's very useless. I did not have a business class. I didn't know I liked business. My mom was a teacher. My dad was in the military. So I really just stumbled into business and very much an accidental entrepreneur. But I think that business is a lot like being a parent.
Yeah.
You have this, it's kind of like this thing that you nurture and you care for and you pour into, and then you watch it grow. And so to me, it fit with being a mom, really.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Did you, looking back on your childhood, did you have any indication where you're like, okay, it makes sense? Or have you just kind of flourished in this spot that you never thought you'd be in?
Well, I never saw it. I mean, I am very much an introvert by nature. I didn't do business, never sold lemonade. I never sold products.
Okay.
I never was that sales girl, but I was competitive. Like I love sports.
Okay.
I've always been very competitive, love watching numbers grow, love watching things grow. So when I look back, I was kind of that quiet competitor. Like I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to try to beat you,
Yeah.
And so that did follow me all the way through. Just really loved competition, loved growing things, loved always improving, trying to improve myself and get better. And so that is probably those things ended up aligning in business once I got to a point in my life where I was and really for me, it was about necessity was kind of how I stepped into business.
Okay, cool. So what got you started? What inspired the idea for Rhea Lana's? I guess, was there a point when you were like, okay, this is going to grow? I'm just so curious. And as a mom myself, it's such a foundational thing. Like if you talk to a new mom, it's like, hey, have you been to the consignment sale yet? Because if you haven't, I can probably get you a discount. So what was the initial thing that created your business and how did it grow from there?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom. My husband was an engineer in the corporate world. We were watching our budget. And
Yeah.
having children, you learn quickly it's expensive.
It is. Yeah.
And they go through things so
Oh my gosh.
quickly, and then you
Mhm.
have all the stuff. And I think I had always been frugal. Again, we lived when I was growing up, a very middle class life, growing up in the military. So I was taught to be frugal,
Mhm.
and so I think that was kind of part of my nature. And so when my husband was working, again, I loved, his engineering job. I loved garage sales. I loved deals. It was kind of the thrill of the hunt.
Yeah.
At the same time, I really loved quality, because if you buy a quality item, it will last.
Mhm.
And at the time when Dave was working as an engineer, we were living in the panhandle of Texas in a small oil town. And there was really only two places you could shop for children's clothes. You could shop at Walmart. And back then, if you bought a children's item from Walmart, really, if you washed it once or twice, it fell apart. It just
Yeah.
wasn't quality.
Mhm.
Or you had the really expensive boutique in town where, buy this little onesie and it cost $80. And that was
Mhm.
25 years ago, and
Yeah.
so both of those were very extremes. And they're just, in my life, there wasn't much in between those.
Mhm.
And so I just felt like there had to be a better thing for moms. And then also when I would try to have a garage sale and I had these wonderful things I'd taken good care of my kids, and I'd put this lovely garage sale out of my carport that I was so proud of. And a shopper would come up and want to pay 5 cents for something that I knew was worth at least $7.50.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I knew it was worth
Like,
more than a nickel.
yeah.
And so I think that's what I felt in the marketplace, that there had to be something for
Mhm.
moms. And so that's kind of where the dream kind of started in my heart. And then my husband made a career change, and he went from being an engineer in the corporate world to going into full-time ministry. And so
Wow.
we moved from the panhandle of Texas to Central Arkansas with our three small children under the age of 5. People thought we were crazy, and we were a little bit, but we just,
That's
you know,
nuts. Yeah.
but it's what we had felt called to. We felt
Yeah.
like it was a right thing to do, and we took a significant pay cut.
Mhm.
And so here we found ourselves with my husband in full-time nonprofit ministry work.
Wow.
Our paycheck, our budget was smaller, and I was trying to stretch the budget. And I do have a degree, but honestly, it's not very useful. And it wasn't like I was a nurse or a teacher or could
Mhm.
just go get a job. And so I just began to be creative of how I could stretch our family budget. I dabbled a little bit of teaching tennis lessons, and actually, one of my first lessons I learned on business is I had run this tennis camp all summer, Courtney. I'd hauled my kids out to the court. I taught tennis in the blazing heat. I got to the end of the summer and I made zero money.
Oh,
Now, looking
no.
back, I'm thinking, how stupid is that? Like, I should have known halfway in. I had to pay instructors, and I had to pay for the equipment, and I had to, but it was this
Yeah.
first lesson of you have to, there's some basic things with business. You got to know the money
Mhm.
coming in, and you got to know the money going out.
Yeah.
But it was during that time when I was just dabbling in some things, and I was doing that. And then I also decided to have this little consignment sale in my living room.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how I just was my youngest child was heading off to preschool, and I knew I had some time and some bandwidth that I could. But the very first one, and I didn't want to do it by myself. Again, I'm an introvert, very not super confident at that stage of my life. Had a lot of fear of failure, a lot of fear of the unknown, and I even invited a friend to do it with me, and she didn't want to. And so I thought, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to try it. And so I had a sale in my living room in 1997, and I had 3 racks of clothes. And I remember
Cool.
just being so excited when 11 moms let me sell their things for them. And so I washed everything, I made it perfect. And
Wow.
so anyway, that's how it got started.
Who did you invite? Like, how did you start that invite list too? What did that look like?
It's such a great question. My husband, I really leaned a lot on my husband because he was in the workforce, and most of
Yeah.
my friends were stay-at-home moms who
Yeah.
didn't really have any, and he had said, well, Rhea Lana, if you invite 100 people, you can get a bulk mail rate on postcards. So that was my goal, was to scour all of my contact list to come up with 100 people. And so it
Nice.
was my friends from the kids' school, in the neighborhood, in church, and, I live in a community. And so I just began
Mhm.
thinking through, who is any mom I know that might let me sell their things. And I came up
Yeah.
with 100 names. I mailed those out. And again, when 11 people said yes, I was just ecstatic.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. So after that, what happened? How did you continue to do that on a typical, like some sort of reoccurring basis, or how did that grow beyond to what it is today?
Well, that first event, that first little sale was actually a failure. I didn't know anything about marketing. And so I was
Yeah,
thrilled that I had those 11 consigners, but I honestly didn't do a very good job inviting shoppers to
got it.
come and buy the things. I'm kind of a perfectionist by nature.
Yeah.
And so I thought if everything is perfect, people will come. And I had to learn, well, actually, I have to tell them about it if they're going to come.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, it was a big lesson that I learned, and I had to kind of put myself out there that, we all have
Mhm.
our strengths and our weaknesses, and we have to always be growing outside of our comfort zone and do things that are hard. And we have to kind of risk failure and rejection. And so I called those 11 consigners. I apologized and I said, will you let me keep your things one more week? And I'm going to try again. And
Yeah.
so then I did lots of marketing and invited
Okay.
people, I made $500 after that. And it was the biggest $500 I'd ever made. And I remember being so thrilled that, okay, this will work. And
Yeah.
so it started there. And I always wanted it to be seasonal, just twice a year.
Mhm.
And for me, that really fit with my life because I was very busy with raising my family. My husband was really busy with his career. Um, but through the years, people would say, well, Rhea Lana, when are you going to get serious and open a store? And I said, never, ever. Like
Yeah.
that's never the end game. That's not what I want to do. I just like this event mode. And so we kept it in our home for several years. And each time it would grow into another room of the house. It took up the kitchen and the living room and
Oh my
then into my
gosh.
daughter's room. But at one point, the neighbors began to complain about the traffic, and then I began to realize too that it wasn't just friends. Like it was beginning to be the general public that didn't really respect my property in my home,
Mm.
and it was beginning to
Mhm.
go, okay, this isn't. And honestly, when I started at Courtney, I wasn't really starting a business. When I first started, it was just meant kind of friends helping friends, but
Yeah.
it was gradually becoming a business.
Yeah.
And so I was beginning to feel this, okay, this isn't just friends and friends. I'm serving the general public. And so something has to kind of shift here.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever start with the store or did you like
No,
just rent spaces?
well, after my home, then, and that actually a neighbor actually complained to the city and they
Yeah.
told us we had to get it, like it's no longer a garage sale, Rihanna. And so we had to get it out of my
Yeah.
house. And so we just would find empty little storefronts to rent for a couple
Mm.
of weeks. But the
Okay.
model has always just been like about a week long as a sale. And so we take about a week to move in and then about a week to sell items and then it's over. And one of the neat things about those early years too that has really made it unique and I think has grown is that although my husband was an engineer in his day job, for his side gig or for his hobby, he loves to program. And so this was back in 1997. And after that very first sale, he had looked at me and he said, Rihanna, you should computerize this. Now,
Yeah.
Courtney, that makes obvious sense now, but in 1997, the moms that I knew, nobody even had a computer in their house. Now we all carry,
Yeah.
computers around in our hand with our phone.
Oh,
But nobody had a computer in their house. And I had told him, that's crazy. Women are not going to do that. But of course, he was right. And so he has always written our software and he just wrote it from scratch. And
oh,
so we used to joke
cool.
that we were the largest barcoded garage sale probably in the world. So we have just been computerized from the very beginning. And part of that was along with my desire for being a perfectionist, I just
Mhm.
wanted moms to be able to trust the experience. When I had taken things to consignment stores, and this is not a criticism of a consignment store of anything like that, but the ones that I had experienced when I would take my items to sell, I never knew what sold or for how much. I never got a
Yeah.
report. I never got a printout. And
Mhm.
so we wanted moms when they consigned with Rhea Lana's to always have a report to know exactly what sold, exactly for how much. And so since the very beginning, we've always offered that. And so I think it's just been part of our niche and part of, we just want moms to feel valued and their things to feel valued in the whole
Mhm.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. Okay. So now you're finding a, a location to rent for a short time locally. At what point did you decide to expand outside of your area?
Well, I live in central Arkansas and moms were driving in from an hour or two away.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
yes, and it was beginning to grow, honestly. It was beginning and it's that entrepreneurial thing when you're like, I'm drowning, like, wow, this might
Mhm.
and I was paying my consigners a lot, but I was dying, honestly. It was hard.
Yeah.
But I was beginning to see that it could be profitable and families loved it. But I was learning a lot about business through all this process. But I did decide I was beginning to see it become profitable. And I thought, I should go ahead and try expanding in Little Rock, which is about an hour away from where I live in
Mm-hmm.
Conway, Arkansas. And I remember at the time, a lot of people said, if you do that, you're going to hurt your sale, Rhea Lana. You're going to, you're going to hurt yourself. And I really thought that I would expand it. I thought I'm just going to try it. I have a team. I've got the equipment. My kids play sports in Little Rock. We're there all the time. So we're just going to do it. And it
Mm-hmm.
felt like a good season of life. My kids were older. So we expanded to Little Rock, and it was this, oh, I can do this again in a different community. And it was the beginning of, oh, this is duplicatable. And
Yeah.
my sister actually lives about 3 hours north from here. And I was beginning to think about, maybe franchising. Also because my husband, I kind of thought my husband would do this ministry thing for a few years and get it out of his system and then go
Yeah.
back into the corporate world, with all the, all the benefits.
Yes. And he
But
didn't.
no, he didn't. And so it was about that
Oh,
time
God.
that he's like, Rhea Lana, I love what I'm doing. I love who I'm working with. And I really had felt like, honestly, as a person of faith, that God had given me this model. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like, this is to take care of your family long term.
Yeah.
And so really it was more having a mindset of, this feels unique. We're not seeing this happen the way we do it anyplace else. I mean, there were consignment sales, but not the way that we do it. And it just felt like it was time to maybe take a small risk. Like we didn't risk much. Like we still
Mm-hmm.
bootstrapped it all. We figured it all out ourselves. I read Franchising for Dummies, just
Yeah.
kind of figured it out.
Wow.
But my sister was my first test franchise because she's about 10 years younger, and I've always bossed her around her whole life, so I knew she would do what I told her to. And
Yeah.
she did. She runs an amazing event in Northwest Arkansas. So
Very cool.
that's what started it. And I would say the other thing that pushed me over the edge was there was a friend, a good friend of mine, and we were both stay-at-home moms and both beginning to kind of get back into the workforce as our kids were getting older. And she was telling me one day, and at the time I was running my events and they were pretty hard. Like when
Mm-hmm.
it kind of felt I'd get to the end and no matter how much money I was making, it didn't seem like enough money,
Yeah.
honestly, but I didn't have a good context of kind of what salaries were, what people were making really, except just in our family. And
Mm-hmm.
the internet wasn't a thing much back then.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, my friend was over and she was helping me wallpaper my bathroom. And that was kind of her side gig. And she was getting ready to step into the workforce. And she said, Rhea Lana, I'm so excited. She has an accounting degree and I'm going to work for the bank and it's a full-time job. I've got 2 weeks of vacation. And when she told me her salary was what I had just made in one event.
Wow.
And it was this aha moment of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Rhea Lana, I think that there are other women
Have
in your
something.
position who would appreciate this opportunity.
100%. That is incredible. How much time passed from the time you started to your first sale in Little Rock?
Probably 5 years, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
Cool.
I was very much very much of a slow trajectory.
Yeah.
We were building it by scratch. No one
Yeah.
ever gave me any money. We didn't ever raise any money.
Yeah.
I
Slow
was just doing
growth.
this very slow growth. But honestly, we kind of call it, kind of 7 years for love. For about probably 7 years, I wasn't making much money. But
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it kind of took the hockey stick thing where
Mm-hmm.
we had a couple of events and the brand was growing and then people were realizing it and then the profit came. But
Yeah.
I was definitely just figuring it out for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Did you have people working for you early on or helping? Like when you were consigning, were you still doing, even for Little Rock, let's use that as an example to
Mhm.
see a little bit of growth outside of your local area, but were you still tagging everything, getting everything ready, or did you have people helping you? What did that look like?
That's a really great question. I did have people helping me. The model back then was volunteers. And
Okay.
so moms would volunteer their time and then they would get to shop early.
Yeah.
And moms loved it because they really cared more about being the first in the door
Yeah.
because,
You get the
we're
best of
this,
the best.
yes. And everything is specific. It's not like going and seeing, it's not like going to the store and having 20 of the same stroller. You might have,
Mm-hmm.
so that was how really events that's how consignment events were run in the early days. And that's what we did. Although I did begin to build a leadership team. And so like when I expanded to Little Rock, I did have a paid leadership team and they
Cool.
were, so at that point I am beginning to hire people to help me and be my sergeants, kind of help me
Yeah.
learn the operations and do all of our, because we were sticklers in operations and making sure we do things the same way every time and the way
Yeah.
we treat customers. And we didn't really know we were building a brand at that time, but we were, it was the Rhea Lana way of doing consignment.
Yeah. So today, if you have a franchise owner, what does the cadence look like for events in different areas? And are these women able, and I say women because it probably is mostly moms running these, if I had to guess, do they have, like, what does their schedule look like? Are they still in between time? Do they have time off? Or like, I'm just kind of curious, what does a day in the life look like for a franchise owner?
Oh, it's so fun. We just had one of our franchise owners do that on Instagram, a day in the life.
Oh,
And it's so
cool.
fun because
Nice.
yes, and she's in the high desert, California, actually. But, yeah, it's a very much a part-time gig. It's a
Okay,
part-time
cool.
gig. And, these events are twice a year. So it's once in the
Gotcha.
fall, once in the spring. And
Nice.
so there's probably now with social media, I think more of us feel that we do need to have more of a presence than you did back when I started, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that is it can still be very, very part-time
Yeah,
until probably 12 weeks leading up to the event. And then
for sure.
you're planning a big event. And the more you plan and the more you prepare, the more successful you are.
Yep.
And like with any business, you want to connect with the women in your community and let them know what you have to offer.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, what's been one of the most unexpected challenges in your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, there was an unexpected challenge, Courtney. I referred a minute ago to having volunteers, and that was the early model of consignment sales. And I had been franchising really maybe 4 years. I was barely above a stay-at-home mom when I franchised. Like I was
Yeah,
sort of just figuring this out. And actually, I ended up being audited by first the state of Arkansas, and it's on our labor. It's kind of was a labor issue,
gotcha.
and with the state of Arkansas, I was in compliance with them. They understood our model, but then the federal Department of Labor they actually were actually targeting the consignment event industry, and because we were growing rapidly, and
Interesting.
I've learned a lot, Courtney, a lot of the things you don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think
sure.
I
Or that you don't want to know
you
either.
don't you don't want to know. I grew up in the military. I love
Yeah,
America. I love our government. I'd never spoken to an attorney in my whole life,
yeah.
and all of a sudden, I found myself in the crosshairs of. Actually, it was overreach, overregulation, but basically, they did not like our volunteer model, and so
Wow.
I found myself fighting the government. I actually filed a lawsuit against the United States government. Can you believe that?
Wow.
It's
That's
crazy.
crazy.
It is. It's you don't grow up hoping that that's what you're going to do. But I was in a position that I had to, honestly, to protect my company, because they were not
Yeah.
going to apply the same standards across the industry. They were just going to target me, and we it was we would go out of business.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of scary to create, or I guess have that lawsuit that you're having to run with and continue to keep your business even with that
Yeah.
rolling. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, how did you get through that financially? Like, were you in a place where you guys were terrified, or like what did that
Mhm.
look like? Because in my mind, I feel like I would tend to just say, "Okay, I'm out." Like that sounds scary.
Well, it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. But I was raised to be a fighter for what's
Yeah.
right. Like I'm gonna fight to the death if it's for what's right. And I knew that
Mhm.
what we were doing was right. I knew, and already just the process, they had done already some things that were wrong, in the process of their audit of me. And so we knew we had some things to stand on. Thankfully, I
Nice.
did have a really good friend that was an attorney here in Little Rock that helped get us started. And then I did have a group out of Washington, D.C. that came alongside me, because we did not have the money at all. And I was at the stage of the entrepreneurial business where I had like two full-time employees.
Yeah.
And yet, the government wants to paint us as if we're this big business
My
and being
gosh.
mean. It
Yeah.
was just, it was ridiculous. Literally. So I'm wearing every hat. I'm wearing every hat to do it all. And actually when the agent had first told me the verdict that I was breaking the Fair Labor Standards Act, which at the time I wasn't super familiar with, which I've learned to very familiar with it now.
Yeah.
But as I pushed back and said, well, are you applying this to the whole industry? And she had said, no, we want you to do this. And then we know that people will follow you. I knew that I would just go out of business, and I knew they wouldn't follow me.
Yeah.
And then she looked at me and she said, well, don't you have a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. that can help you with this?
Oh my goodness.
So I learned a lot. I actually became that lobbyist. I went to Washington, D.C., walked
Wow.
the halls in my high heels till I had blisters on my feet, learned to speak to Congress people. We had a bill for at one point. We had a Children's Consignment Event Recognition Act that almost got passed.
Wow.
So we spent, and your question that you asked about trying to run a business and with my franchise owners during that time, my goal was to one, stay in business, to
Mm-hmm.
still be able to offer franchises, but to be honest and authentic about what was going on, because
Yeah.
I felt like that was my biggest weapon. And so we never hid anything.
Nice.
And thankfully we were able to get on some national media, and but I would just always tell my franchise owners, I will talk to you at any time. We're going to always tell you what's going on. We're going to always be honest. And um, actually, the government did have a $6 million fine over my head, Courtney. And I mean, which would have, bankrupt
Yeah.
us. And so it was terrifying. But I do think when you have when your business is a mission, and I know that is what you're about with your podcast,
Mm-hmm.
when your business is your mission and you feel like it's what you've been called to, it's not about the money, and it's not. I mean, yes, we're supporting our family, but
Yeah.
when it's about something bigger, then sometimes you just know you're called to something bigger. And so it
Mm-hmm.
was during that season that, although I was terrified, really I grew so much. I learned to communicate. I grew as a leader, and a cool thing is that we actually won in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. Like, it made it all the way. If your audience
Wow.
doesn't know, that's one step below the Supreme Court. And so we actually won the first time, and it was on their abuse and their overreach and overregulation and how they treated me that they thought they could get away with. And so we ended up losing in the end, and it's been fine, and we've made it. We've been fine. It was in 2019 when we got that ultimate verdict that we lost, and at the time it was heartbreaking. I
Yeah.
cried in front of my company. I never cry,
Yeah.
but it was this thing we'd been fighting for 10 years. But God used it for good, but I just, you just never know. Never, ever, ever did I think I would be in that position. But I think my word I would love for our viewers and listeners is to just know you can do so much more than you think you can,
Mm-hmm.
and just because you can, if your heart is right and the mission and the focus and your why is right, you can do so much more. And the world needs us to do more. The world
Mm-hmm.
needs the message that we are fighting for and trying to give out there. So.
Yeah, your story is incredible. I mean, from, your childhood to the franchise you're running today, that it's incredible. And it is proof that God will use you in ways that you never expect
Mhm.
for his glory. And your story is a testament. I mean, after you got that news, what did you do? What did you do next with your team? I mean, I'm sure there was this looming just heaviness
Mhm.
um, within your organization. How did you start to turn that around to get people fired up again and get them excited and keep your teams motivated?
Well, the interesting thing is that we got the news on the first day of our annual Franchise Owners Conference. I will never forget it.
Wow.
We were actually in Oklahoma City, and my husband pulled me to the side, and he had just gotten the call from the attorney. And what I wanted to do is fall on the floor and cry, because
Yeah.
this thing I'd been fighting for. But I've got all my franchise owners around me. This is when we come together to rally and encourage each other for the next year. And so I gathered my lieutenants, my inner circle, and we began to kind of plan out the weekend. And so we actually went through the weekend giving awards and doing and teaching, not knowing that on Sunday, which was our last day, 2 days later, I was going to need to give this news to the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still a defining moment in my life, Courtney, because I stood up there on the stage, my husband and I did, and I began to share this news. And again, the older you get, you cry less, you're tougher. But I did start crying because I was heartbroken that I had lost, on behalf of
Yeah.
my company. But I will still never forget it, because the women out there in the audience, my franchise owners, they stood up and they gave this standing ovation. And it was this moment of, we trust you and we're behind you and we're going to follow you wherever you take us. And so the cool thing is, and to pardon the emotion, um, but they followed my leadership. And so, because we were then
Wow.
within 6 weeks, we were beginning our fall event season. And so we had to change our model. Like we had kind of been thinking we knew what we could do if we lost, but
Yeah.
now you got to put the rubber to the road, and is it going to work? And so I still run our large events in Arkansas. And so my
Oh,
event was the
wow.
first one. And so I got with my team. We changed our model. That was when we began to sell tickets. If I think we
Mm-hmm.
didn't used to sell tickets, but we no longer did volunteers. We all figured out how to hire employees and run events on employees. And so then that was in early June. I had my event in mid-July. It went
Wow.
amazing. And then we had about 100 franchises then, or so, 90. And we kind of call it threading the needle, but we just took each franchise through it. Here's what you do. Here's what you
Wow.
do. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just awesome. Honestly, it was this awesome unifying thing for our company. And we all realized like it was worth fighting for. We're glad we fought for it. We needed to fight for it over those 10 years. I needed the women in my business, my company, to become successful in their markets.
Yeah.
And so we all had become warriors, and they were like, we're ready, give us the next
Mm-hmm.
battle. And so it really, people were excited. And then we saw a lot of momentum. And then just to carry it a little bit further, that was 2019. And then in 2020, if you remember what happened in 2020 was COVID
Yeah. Yeah.
and the pandemic. And we're in the event business. And so here we were, like every event in the world is shut down. And and I remember thinking, I thought fighting the government was hard.
You're like, this might take the cake.
But the cool thing is we'd
Oh
done a hard
man.
thing. We were
Yeah.
we were used to doing a hard thing. So we
You're
had those
so
muscles
resilient.
stretched, and yeah, we were building resilience. And that's what business is.
Mm-hmm.
But moms are resilient, and
Mm-hmm.
our heart and our focus is moms. And we just knew that moms wanted us to serve them. They were waiting on us to, please hang around, Rhea Lana. Please keep providing
Yeah.
events. Please keep figuring this out.
Yeah.
So
Did you guys have to take a break or were you able to figure that out within a few months?
we did not take much of a break at all, honestly.
Good.
And I live in Arkansas, which was a really great state.
Yeah.
And so I was able to work with our governor and our local officials. And we
Amazing.
pretty much didn't skip. Now, in March and April, we had events shutting down all over the country that were, in other states.
Mm-hmm.
But then once we kind of got into July, I was told we all did the crazy things we did with, spacing and all the
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But we also, like so many business, we tried some new things because of COVID that
Yeah.
really ended up helping us with new
Oh, cool.
services. And so it turned into, again, a hardship can become a blessing if it's looked at the right way and
Yep.
approached the right way. But a lot of it does depend on just kind of the mindset and how are we going to get through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And with business owners that I work with, tariffs are a big thing right now for them of what they're trying to figure out. And I think some of the conversations I've had has been we figured out some pretty hard stuff in COVID and still made things work. And this is no different. It's going to stretch us. There's always going to be something hard to deal with.
Mm,
And now we just have to change strategy. What does this look like? It might not be out of China anymore. What does it look like out of
mm,
India? Like there are just hard things we have to figure out, but it's
mm,
solvable
mm,
and we can figure this out. So I think that the resilience your company has built is pretty amazing.
mm.
And I'm sure you have very loyal franchise owners after all that they've been through with you. It has to be
We
really
were
precious.
It's a neat way. Franchising is cool because you do get to do franchising or business in community. And
Yeah.
so, and really a lot of the women have been in our company a long time, and then they get to mentor the newer ones coming in. So yeah, there's a lot of trust, and that's what I'm probably the most grateful for.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. So what are your business or what are the goals for your business over the next year?
We would love to grow. We are looking to just expand our footprint. We would love to offer more franchising opportunities to women out there. So, we have a long-term goal. We have about 120 franchises. Our next big goal is 150. I don't think we'll hit that this
Cool.
year.
Yeah.
We hope we can sell 10 this year. It's a good, healthy goal for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, how do you balance the demands of running a business with your personal life? You're a mom, and you have a husband, you have, I'm sure, a social life. How do you balance it all?
Well, It's seasons of life, I think. There are seasons. I'm in this great season, honestly, where I'm an empty nester. I'm a
Yeah.
grandma. I do go
Cool.
travel and see my grandkids. And so
Hmm.
I really love having this to do. I have some of my friends that are retiring, and I don't want to retire. I love working. I
Yeah.
love what I'm doing. And so, but there was a season when it was really hard. And again, we bootstrapped it. I was literally probably working 80, 100-hour weeks for a long time. And my kids were older, thankfully. I didn't really start working a lot until my
Hmm.
kids were in high school and college. So, um, but there was a season that I kind of did hit a wall, Courtney, and it was kind of during when I was dealing with all those hard things,
Hmm.
because you add the really hard things on top of. And I remember just kind of hitting a wall emotionally. And I was again raised in the military, where you're tough and you
Yeah.
don't cry and you just
Hmm.
do the next hard thing. And you can only kind of do that for so long. And that's what I learned. And I reached a point where I did do some counseling, and it was the best thing I've ever done. I highly recommend it. But
Yeah.
I was 55 years old before I had done that. And I should have done it a
Wow.
lot earlier. Just
Hmm.
really had some things I needed to process and deal with, which most of us do.
Yep.
And it's now really a part of my life as an executive. I just think we all, and I think
Nice.
also with my circle, I just really have never known many other women like me. I'm sure they
Hmm.
are in Dallas and Kansas City, but where I live in Conway, Arkansas, I just don't
Yeah.
have a circle. And
Yeah.
so as an executive, you do need a safe place where you can go to process. And I would say anywhere in the journey, you just need a
Hmm.
place you can go. It's not family, it's not in your work, but that you're getting some good, healthy counsel to
Hmm.
make wise decisions. And I just think it's seasonal. I think young women that are probably trying to raise their kids, you need help. Either you need a nanny or you need
Yeah.
family. If you need something, and I
Yeah.
think it looks different depending on what season you're in.
Absolutely. So, what would you tell your younger self today if you could look back on her and give her some advice? What would that be?
I would tell Rhea Lana, you can do more than you think you can. Don't be so afraid. Don't be afraid of failure. Just keep trying. Treat people right. Always wake up every day. Stay true to your values, and God does want to use you more than you think.
Hmm.
And so have confidence and just be brave. Because I think I was very insecure, didn't think I had much to offer. And I spent a lot of my life that way. And I tend to think that a lot of women are that way. And I just would love for women to know you can do so much more than you think you can, especially in different seasons of life. You kind of just depends on where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, more of a question for today. What are you loving, learning, and letting go of right now?
That is such a great question. Well, I'll start with maybe the last one first, okay? Letting go of. I think I'm letting go of what people think of me more and more.
Yeah.
You just can't control what everybody thinks of you, especially as you grow as a leader and your impact grows. You just can't please everyone. And
Yeah.
so I think I've spent a lot of my life trying to be a people pleaser, and I want people to like me. I really do, but
Hmm.
I can only control so much of that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm working to let go of. One of the things that I'm loving is I am loving building teams. I am loving building our corporate team now. As we have more franchises, we have this growing corporate team, and I get to work with these amazing young women, and it's just really fun. And I am learning, how to, sometimes not everybody is the right fit for us. And so
Yeah.
I'm learning how to kind of some of those relationships I probably should end sooner rather than trying to coach and coach and coach and coach, and ultimately it still
Hmm.
doesn't work. So
Yep.
I'm learning, but I'm loving the team I work with. But with running our company with my franchise owners, I'm excited to get up every day and just thankful to be part of a mission that does help families. It's exciting to be part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the final question that I ask all guests is, what's one thing you wish you knew when you started your entrepreneurial journey?
Whew, I wish. I don't know. I think I wish I knew it was going to be as hard as it's been. But if I
Yeah.
knew, maybe I wouldn't have started.
I've heard that exact that exact sentiment before.
Whew.
Yep.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was getting into. Absolutely zero idea. But I think maybe that's why it's supposed to be that way. We,
Yep.
we we can only see so far ahead, and
Yeah.
that way we can handle this, and then we see the next little bit of ahead. And meanwhile, we're gaining new skills, we're gaining confidence, And so I think I also wish I'd known how fun it was going to be too. Like it's so enriching, just the relationships you get to build. And, we ourselves get smarter. I know you experience this too, Courtney. You get smarter, you learn
Yeah.
things. And then it's really fun to work with other smart people who
Yeah.
also have passion and they're smart and they love their families. And they, I remember early on, I went to New York for this award that I had received, and I really had never done much of that before, never really networked and never really, but I thought, I'm going to go network and I'm going to go meet some other women, accomplished business owners. And I got up there and it just felt like every session I went to, I just was a fish out of water. And this was probably 20 years ago. So the world has changed a little bit, but I just didn't fit. Like a lot of the women that I met, they had really sacrificed their families. They had these great careers, but they had sacrificed so much. And I'm sure they had to. And they kind of sounded like the men. And and I just kept thinking that's not who I want to be. Like, I want to, as tough as it is to be married and have a family, I'm going to try as hard as I can to still be married and still have a family and have a business. And there were definitely times when my business took the back burner because I needed to stay married or I needed to focus on my kids
100%.
So that's just one of the things that I think I've learned along the way.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So where can people find you? How can they learn more about Rhea Lana, maybe consignment sales in their location, or reach out to you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Rhea Lana Riner, and then rhealana.com/podcast is where I'm also giving away some free consults. So if anybody would love to just do a free 1 hour, we're often a limited number of those. They don't have to be interested in franchising. Maybe it's just an entrepreneurial journey. We're giving those away for free. But we would love for moms to find our events. We're all across the country in about 26 states. And that's really the heart and soul of what we do.
Awesome. Well, thank you for what you do. Thank you for taking time to spend with me today. I appreciate it so much. Your story is amazing, fascinating. It will inspire me for a really long time. I feel like I have this stamp on my heart now, just hearing what you've been through, and gives me a lot of excitement and hope for my own journey. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Entrepreneur's Blueprint. I hope you found inspiration and insights to fuel your entrepreneurial journey. If you're looking for support in building or scaling your business profitably, visit my website or send me an email to learn more about how I help mission-driven businesses become more profitable, proactive, and efficient. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps other entrepreneurs discover the show, and it would mean so much to me as well. Until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep going.